Chairman, I just can't believe what I just heard from our ranking member blaming the wealthy people of this country for our debt because they finance it. As my understanding is, Congress and the President are in charge of our debt. We make the decisions on how we spend money and where we get the revenue from. It's the people who have money who buy the Treasury bills that are out there for a general purpose to be able to fund the government. This is backward thinking in my mind. Anyway, to continue on with the discussion here. Gentlemen, ever since mid-January when the federal government hit $31.4 trillion debt ceiling, Treasury Department deployed extraordinary measures to maintain payments on all federal obligations. We know these measures have taxpayer costs associated with them, and I'm sure they're not cheap. Either one of you gentlemen, can you tell us how much money that you project these extraordinary measures cost the taxpayers in direct costs that we have on the back end of this? I think, Mr. Arkin, you in your testimony listed a set of numbers.
We haven't looked at what the impact has been for this most recent impact. When we looked back for the 2011 impasse, it was in the range of tens of millions of dollars that it cost. And you know, the factors that were in play then were similar to now, but we don't have a number for what's...
Well, you were talking about in the billions of dollars in your testimony of direct costs.
So I'm not sure I mentioned that.
The economic costs, that's yet to come, but just the delay in contract payments and that sort of stuff, those kind of costs, you had a figure in you listed several different entities, several different items there.
Okay. Yeah, I don't recall that number offhand, but we can get that to you.
Okay. With regards to recent bank failures reveal that there's a tremendous liquidity problem. And if you issue another $1 trillion worth of Treasury bills, it would have seemed to me that it would exacerbate that problem due to the continued increased cost of the rates on those Treasury bills. You know, the Fed, we've got a problem with inflation. You know, yesterday in the Wall Street talked about the lingering effects of the pandemic stave off the expected recession. There's about $500 billion still in the system that's got to be spent, or it's their extra savings, they called it, that's going to keep the economy going and keep it pumped up. So if that's the case, the Fed's going to have to come up with more increased interest rates, I would assume, to try and slow things down again. And these increased costs are going to have another exacerbating situation with regards to the banks. The Fed's already upside down on their rates. A lot of the banks are upside down, as shown by the 3 recent failures, and we have a number of banks that are still in a rather illiquid position. It would seem to me this is going to exacerbate the situation. Would you want to comment on that? Either one of you?
No, I mean, I think all I would say is that I think having 15 years of consistent interest rates at a given level, even if it's low, high, regardless, when you have a sudden change in those interest rates, it is going to probably lead to some form of economic disruption. In this case, interest rates had started very low and went up again at a pretty high rate. But outside of that, I don't have much to say.
Well, I think it's very concerning to me because in today's Wall Street Journal, they have an article there about big banks faced a boost in capital safety net. Because of this situation, the regulators are looking at a 20% increase in capital for the banks over $100 billion. And to me, it's directly responsible or tied back to this interest rate problem that is in our system right now. And I think it's going to be exacerbated by this increased debt that we've incurred. And so I'm concerned about all of how these things all fit together. And I just wonder if you guys had a comment on that.
I mean, in general, rising interest rates are a risk for the fiscal outlook. Historically, the last 20 years, interest rates have been around 1.5% of GDP. 30 years from now, that's up closer to 8.5% of GDP. And so you'll see, based on the projections at least, an increasing share of federal expenditures going to interest payments rather than to program spending.
Okay, I see my time's about up, and I saw what the chairman did to you guys, so I'm going to not do that to you. With that, I'll yield back.